Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking RV Tech. I'm your host, Dave Solberg, along with Dustin Simpsons from California RV Specialists. And today we're going to talk about lithium batteries and do you really need them? Now, Dustin has brought along Zach, one of his specialist technicians out there. And Zach does an awful lot of work with customers looking for new lithium batteries. Now, last week we talked about lead acid batteries. We got a little bit on the technical side of it. And I wanted to just touch base on, first of all, the different batteries that are available to people currently out there. And what happens, Dustin, you see this all the time, is somebody grabs a lead acid battery and they don't take care of it. And all of a sudden it comes in and it looks like a couple beach balls that are out there. In fact, I've got a slide here. I'm going to bring this up. This was out of a 2015 Thor, and this was not the original battery setup because you can see the tray in the front. So this probably came with 4 6-volt lead acid batteries hooked in series, and this thing was in such bad shape. And so, the question is a lot of people get so fed up with these lead acid batteries that they say, well, I'm done with them. I'm just going to put in lithium. That's the hot button. And, without doing a little bit of research and understanding how you use an RV, you might spend thousands of dollars for something you'll never use. So Dustin, what do you typically see when somebody comes in with battery issues like this one here?
So just basic battery knowledge. Nobody's ever took the time to explain to them what maintenance is required, how often they should be checking the water levels, how often they should be cleaning the terminals or checking them to see if they're tight, even cleaning the top of the batteries. So like in this example, you can see the surface of the batteries are dirty and the terminals are dirty and they're also swollen. So that's just a clear indicator that they weren't being serviced. So they depleted the water levels from use, and that could have been used from just being plugged in all the time and they didn't know that they needed to check the water on it. They didn't know they needed to, cycle the batteries.
Yep. Yeah. These batteries were bone dry,
yeah.
Which I think is kind of ironic because if you look close at the cells, there's 3 cells on the top and they have what's called a quick disconnect. It's just a little slider level. So instead of taking each individual cap off, you just click these 2 bars together and you're supposed to be able to just look at it right away. And that's the biggest thing that I see is instead of jumping right into lithium batteries, you need to understand how you RV, how much power you need. And, lead acid batteries will work really well if you take care of them. So what do you recommend for maintenance on lead acid?
Well, it depends on how they're using it. So it depends on if they're a full-timer or if they're just a weekend warrior guy just going to go out, a couple times a year. If you're living in it, for example, say full-time, my advice to the consumer is once a month, unplug the shore power, turn on all the lights and fans, and pretend like you're dry camping. Let the batteries deplete for 3 to 4 hours. Don't kill it because you never want to run a lead acid battery below 50% of its charge. But cycle them, exercise them, run them down, check the water level on them, plug them back in, and let them charge back up. And so that's kind of if you're full timing it. If you're not full timing, same thing. If the unit's in storage, we know that the batteries are going to deplete. They say 4% on average per week. So if it's in storage for a month, you may be depleting your battery by 20%. So, same thing. If you have a solar or you don't have a solar, it's a good idea to exercise those batteries, use them, take it home, pick it up every couple months, take it home, plug it in, charge it up, drain them down, charge it back up, cycle them. And then the water, obviously the person that lives in it full time needs to be checking them monthly. The person that's not in it full time, I would say every 2 to 3 months in the summer, maybe every 4 months in the winter.
Okay. So, a lot of people get frustrated with the battery. They don't check the water. They don't store them properly. They sulfate, like this one here. So they say, yeah, I'm going to buy lithium and because I don't have to take care of them. I don't have to do anything. And then we just had a question come here from Scott, and I'm going to touch on that here in just a second. But so I wanted to ask Zach, is that true? Is there absolutely no maintenance or worry-free with lithium?
No. Even though they're, whether it's AGMs or lithiums or whatever, they boast themselves as maintenance-free. what they're really talking about is checking fluid levels and things like that. You don't have that normal pop top maintenance that you have to do. You still need to check connections for corrosion. You need to still cycle the batteries. You can't just let the stuff sit. Regardless of what the battery is and how they're made, they're designed to transfer ions between one plate to the other. If you let them sit stagnant, whether it's on charge all the time or not, the opposite plate is going to sulfate, and then you're not allowed, to create that chemical reaction between the batteries. And that's this question that comes up. I use lithium batteries. As soon as the temperature drops, they can't produce. I mean, they have their things that go on with them, and you have to know what you're getting into. Lithium batteries, that's one of the things is heat-related issues. A lot of like Battleborns and other things, they offer them to be heated and stuff. You have to know that. People just automatically jump into it like you're talking about, when that may not be exactly what that person needs.
Right. Well, and that's something, when lithium first came out, and we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I wanted to cover on Scott's topic here. Everybody, I think the Class C's were probably, or B's, the vans were the first ones to come out with lithiums, because everybody was boondocking and dry camping with those, and they were running the roof air conditioners and all this stuff. So lithiums that was the automatic. We're going to put in lithiums without any investigation or anything. And I remember Winnebago had horrible problems with the units that were sitting out on the lot, because once it got below freezing, then that lithium battery, you can ruin it unless you have some kind of heating system. And we'll get into quality lithium batteries at some point in time. But if you're going to do any type of cold weather camping, that lithium battery needs to stay above freezing. And otherwise you can ruin the battery, or if it has a battery management system in it, it'll shut the battery completely off. And so now all of a sudden there's nothing out here. And I brought this picture up here because this is an Expion 360 brand battery, and it does have a battery management system in it. But if you'll notice the wrap around that, and this is a battery we put into that Thor because it will be doing some cold weather camping. And that heater then keeps that battery up, to a point where it will still take a charge, and it will still give you the amp hours that you're looking for. So that's something that is very important, to do that. So let's back up here just a little bit. I want to go through the different types that you have. So when we start looking at what's the right battery for you, and Scott's come back and he went to Agm batteries. 12 volt AGMs, he says that they're the best source. So you start off to get lead acid batteries, and you talk to a lot of battery manufacturers out there, and lead acid batteries will do wonderful for you. It's just maintenance, and they're going to gas, so when you charge that battery up, you're going to get some boiling of that. And depending on your converter, of course, the typical converter will just do 13.6 till the battery's charged, and then drop to 13.2. If you have a multi-stage charger, you have a large inverter, those will do up to 16 volts to break up that sulfation. Then you get more gassing. So it's got to be in a vented compartment. That means it's going to be cold, where you're putting it at. The next one then is Agm battery, and that's completely sealed. I think, Zach, you talked on that. I know you guys carry Interstate, and you've got what kind of batteries do you have in the Interstate?
So in the store, I actually only carry typical pop top flooded batteries and sealed flooded batteries. I don't carry any AGMs or lithiums in stock. I order them as I need them. It really depends. If the customer comes in and wants something specific, we'll go that route. A lot of times we're either selling the Go Power, the Sun cycle batteries, or the Expions, as you showed in the thing there. Those are probably, in my opinion, two of the best on the market.
Okay, good. And AGM, there's less sulfation out of it. There still can be some, but so then we look at lithium batteries, and before, Scott's been posting quite a few stuff. Does anybody still use lead acid? They do.
90% of them. Yeah.
How many percentage wise, what do you guys sell lead acid versus AGM and lithium?
Lead acid 100% is what's being sold. And it's really dependent upon what the customer's use is. Like I mentioned earlier, everybody's needs are different. So, Scott kind of stated, hey, solar and AGMs are the way to go. And that may be for him, but not the guy that's doing tons of inverter play. And that's what he does, right? Lithiums are his option. Way more flooded pop top lead acid batteries.
Yeah. And so that brings us into our, and what battery is best for you? And I get that question all the time in the seminars. Well, my lead acid batteries went out in 6-8 months. So what's the best one for me? And what a lot of people don't realize, if you're looking at a battery or an RV and it's sitting on the dealer lot for a long period of time, they probably aren't charging it up all the time. And you could have a bad battery to start with, right from there on the lead acid side or even AGMs. And so the thing you got to look at, in my opinion, is, how much are you going to boondock? The real key in this thing is, you can actually run an RV without a battery, correct?
Technically, yeah. It's
yeah.
Yes, technically, yes.
Well, yeah, and let me explain that. Because the thing is that you got your typical WIFCO, and I'm just going to reach around here and show. I know most people can't see this, and I think I've got a slide of it somewhere, but whatever type of a converter charger you have, when your batteries get down to 50%, it kicks in, it does 12.6 volts. And then when the battery gets up to 12.6, then that will kick down and go to 13.2 and just do a maintenance charge. Well, I know of people that their batteries went completely dead. They got a short in the system, and that converter will run at 13.6 all the time. And it will power everything in your rig, if it's connected correctly. So if you're going to be plugged into shoreline power all the time, you don't need an expensive battery. A lead acid battery will work fine for you. You see them at big box stores for what, $89.95 or less.
Yep.
The only thing I've seen bad though, Dave, is like when their batteries have gone bad or they're dead, and that converter gets stuck in high boost mode. It's at 13.6, whatever the highest output is, 14.2, 14.6. They're burning up the high sides of the converters.
Yeah, I was just
And then they're just like if they're operating leveling jacks or they're operating slide outs, the converter can only produce so much voltage. So that battery bank, not having that battery bank to draw off of, now it's struggling and stressing out that converter, which usually burns out the converters.
Right. And I don't recommend not having a battery in it or even a dead battery. I mean, you go back to these here.
It's made to work together.
Yeah. These batteries, this guy that bought this unit, I think he used those an entire summer. And, but he was plugged in all the time.
Yeah.
So the thing, what you really have to look at is if you have a multi-stage converter that's going to do 14.4 or up to 16, or you have a solar panel system that has a charge controller that's going to do that high voltage. Yeah, you want to get a battery in that system that's going to work. So, my point is though that if you are going to do no dry camping at all, you're not going to even do a overnight in a rest stop or something like that, then going to AGM or going to lithium batteries is a waste of money.
Waste of money,
100%.
Yeah, and we're still seeing a lot of people that are using the lead acid.
Even going back to maintenance. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you out, Dave.
Go ahead.
Even in this example, these pictures, right? So some of the motorhomes that come in here will have 6 volt batteries in there. And some of I call it the old timers, because I've been around 25 years now doing it, learning lessons from the consumer. In this example, if they only had 2 6 volt batteries, guys that are making those last 6-7 years, they're not only keeping an eye on, like the basics, the connections, the cables, the water level, but sometimes I've had them tell me, hey, Dustin, rotating the battery helps too, because you look at, the positive cables coming to that main battery and charging it first. So it's heating that up first, and then it's trickling over to the secondary battery. So by rotating the batteries, and I don't know if we've all had that, experience with the remote control. My remote control doesn't work, and I go to the battery drawer and I don't have any extra batteries, and then I've mixed up the batteries. I put it back in, and now it's up and working.
Well, that's because all the power settles to the bottom of the battery. Yeah. So all you really have to do is roll them. That's how I do it. And then you it's kind of like a tire. It's only flat on the bottom. So that's what happens there. But then if that doesn't work, then you do this. If you lunge that remote at the TV, it sends. If you got weak batteries, it'll. That's how that works. So that
Chuck remembers the remotes with the cords on them, though.
Oh, I do too. My dog ate mine. So we had a question come up, and it's from Christina, and she said, "Can you touch on sealed lead acid batteries? We just bought a new Jayco and got an Interstate 24M battery, and went to add check distilled water and realized you can't." So you guys want to touch on that? Here's a picture of one from US Battery. You see there is no cells that are open to be able to add fluid.
So the EFB that she's talking about, which is Interstate specific, it's a regular lead acid battery, but it's a sealed container. It's built almost the same as your typical pop top lead acid batteries. A little bit different. They're not designed to what's the best way to say it? Work as hot and stuff to release evaporate the fluid. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So there is no checking of maintenance. You still have to cycle the battery. You still have to. It's similar in case design as an AGM. It's just built internally different than an AGM. It's more like a regular pop top.
Hybrid.
Yeah. That's basically what it is. It's like a hybrid. Is their version of it.
Yep.
They do have a different warranty though too. So all the 24M EFB versions,
2-year replacement.
2-year, instead of 1 year like the traditional.
Okay.
We've been selling a lot of those as well.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And one of the things that you do have to be careful about is that if you just go into a typical auto store and you're looking for a battery for your RV and the house section side of it, you got to make sure you get something that is able to cycle and deep cycle. And a lot of the people working at that auto store, they know cars, but they don't know RVs. And classic examples, we had the great bike ride that goes across to Iowa this summer. There was a motorhome parked in the neighbor's backyard, and it was dead, and they couldn't get the slide rooms in. And so I went over and took a look at it, and they had 2 brand new O'Reilly Auto, which is called Rapid Start. They were cold cranking amps. They were engine batteries that were put into that unit. And, the guy said it was like a 2-year-old coachman. And he said, my batteries are already dead. And so for this bike ride, I wanted to make sure that I had new batteries. So I went to O'Reilly, and guy plunked into, engine batteries in it. They weren't designed for deep cycling. And within a few weeks, they were no good anymore.
Yeah. So, that's a good point. Before we jump into this question here that the customer has, a lot of times you see people selling, instead of true deep cycle batteries, they get sold a dual purpose battery. And yes, a dual purpose battery will do it. It'll do its thing. But they're more designed for like boats, like trolling motors and stuff, kind of get them going and do your thing. So they typically, from what I've seen out here, they won't last as long as your regular deep cycle. So whenever you are buying, whether it's from an RV place or an automotive, you need to know the group size and that you are looking for a deep cycle.
Yep. No, I agree. And Scott brings up a point with lithium batteries and overcharging. We're going to get into that in just a second here. So what I want to do first, though, is I would like to go in and I want to show a couple slides here. I did an awful lot of research on lithium batteries when we first looked at putting one into the system over here. Like I say, Winnebago had an issue with their Class Bs. They put lithium batteries in them, and then they put them all out in the lot. And of course, we have winter is practically all year round. Our joke here is that we were just happy summer came on a weekend this year. So we're dealing with all this cold weather and below freezing, and they were having just horrible problems with the lithium batteries, and found out that, you get below freezing on these things and they won't take a charge, and they can overcharge if you've got one of your high things. So they did some research as well, and found there's several different things to look at when you're looking at a lithium battery. And I want to get into my slide here. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. So first of all, there's a lot of lithium that's out in the market that has come in from overseas, and I hear several people that they call it lick and stick. That's the term for the good battery companies that say, there's these cheap batteries made out there, and they just put out a request for X amount of amp hours, and this is the price I want. And so they get those and they just lick this label and stick it on, and it's XYZ battery. And there's a lot of stuff in the RV industry that was built for houses and residential. I see solar panels, and I see appliances and batteries, specifically lithium ions. That's fine if they're in a house where it's heated and environmentally controlled, and it's not bouncing down the road at 65, 70 miles an hour and jarring all this stuff. But you put that application into an RV and it just doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff when it comes to solar and batteries that are manufactured for the residential or the commercial industry, that's going to sit on a building, and it's going to have this battery bank and the power in a building or a basement or someplace where it's climate controlled. And so the first thing you look at, and I'm going to use Expion 360 here because they spent a lot of time with me. This company actually was Zamp Solar, and that's where I first started working with them. And they made a phenomenal solar panel. They sold the company, and now they are working with the batteries here. Same people. And the first thing you look at is the case, to make sure, or actually the first thing I would look at, is the actual cell. There's different cells that are available out there. You want something that's UL listed. You want something that is recognized by this file, the stainless steel encased cylinder file. There's a lot of cheap stuff like polymer cells and these others out there. But if a lithium battery company won't show you what the inside of that battery is, I wouldn't buy it. You guys have done some research. I think, didn't you even tear one of these apart?
It was a lead acid battery, but yeah.
Okay.
Well, just to jump on this a little bit, is most people will come in and they'll ask the question, they're talking about lithiums and they're thinking about it, and then they hear the price and they take a huge step back, and they're like, I'm looking at over $1,000 for a battery. That's insane, right? Well, then you get that phone call later or the next day of, hey, I found this $300 lithium battery on Amazon. And that slide is a perfect example of showing why that battery is $300, why it's going to start affecting other things in your unit.
Yeah, it's the same with the lead acid batteries too.
Mm-hmm.
We run across that same problem. I'm going to say the big box stores, they sell a lower quality grade of 6-volt battery. It's in the same box. It looks identical. The only difference is the weight and the quality of the product that's in it. So they'll say, well, how come this one's $100 over here at the membership brand store?
Yep.
Yours are $160. Why is there a $60 difference? Well, it's the weight.
Yeah.
And the quality of it.
Yeah. And the model number looks close to the same. So they're thinking that, all these membership stores, that you hear the story that their products are really top shelf products, just renamed, for their thing. Well, this is not the case.
Yeah.
There's different plates. There's different connections. The connections are the big things. Here's another one. You look at this one, solid copper plates versus the nickel plated tin strips. You know, again, if it's going to sit someplace and never move, that might be okay, but that's why you have problems with some of these batteries. The connections are huge, mechanical connections versus soldered. I mean, you think about soldering these connections and then letting these batteries go down the road 60, 70 miles an hour, jarring all over the place. You know, it can't work. And then the big thing, in my opinion, now this is what we did with the, we took two 100 amp batteries and replaced those 6 volts in here. So now he's got 200 amp hours, and we'll get to that in just a second here. But you know, the big thing that I see is then in the connections and where was I go? Oh, the battery management system. Now, Scott brought up a item here that says, tell them about lithium batteries without overcharging, protection built into it. And that's what that BMS is, the battery management system. So it manages, first of all, if it gets down below freezing, it'll shut the battery off. And if you have a heat system on it, like we had that picture on, it will turn that heat pad on for you so that the batteries won't get ruined. But it will also, you know, keep it from overcharging. So if you get the 16 volt charge that some of these multi-stage chargers have, you could ruin a lithium battery pretty easy. And, you know, there are cases of some of these that have started on fire, you know, that people said. And I think, didn't you mention you had your guys's? There's
a body shop behind us that does RV repair, and they had a local dealer, alternate or change something with the quality of the lithium battery. So I think they kept the nicer battery and supplied the owner with a inferior battery.
Yep.
Well, it caught the whole unit on fire, totaled it.
Yeah.
You guys only used it one time. So
yeah. And I don't know the chemistry behind it and the exact technology, but when the lithium batteries first came out, it was not the lithium ion phosphate that you see here. This is what you're looking for, the LiFePO4 lithium ion phosphate. And, you know, that's another part of the problem is people just say lithium, and it's this blanket of, you know, kind of like batteries. And, you know, so that's the big thing that you want to talk about is when you're looking for quality batteries, get inside and figure out, you know, what are they doing? This company, you know, I go back to the picture that they had of the case. The case is specifically designed with reinforced pieces to, you know, so even if you have those cells and they're the good cells, a lot of people use foam. They use the paperboard, fiberboard stuff that's tissue papers made out of, you know, tissue boxes, and it just doesn't hold up, you know, with that type of stuff. So let's look at the questions we've got. Scott said those, we talked about that, and the E24s. And Scott says here, isn't it true you need a converter made to charge lithium batteries? Oops, where'd it go? Stick converter can overcharge a lithium. So that brings up the next good question. You know, the thing about you can't just throw a lithium battery in where you had a lead acid battery in the past. You know, Zach, what do you tell people when they're looking to switch?
So a lot of times it's always expectation versus reality. So when people are coming into me and I'm talking to them about doing it, it's usually because they're looking at a large dry camping situation. So people that do come in and they're, like you had stated, where it's just like, I'm done dealing with this major amount of maintenance. I read on a forum, on Facebook, on whatever, that this is the way to go. Yeah, it's not that simple. Your standard typical converters that are in the units, they're not made to charge that. The way the charging rate and the charging cycle of that battery is different, so they don't know it. You have to change and upgrade your converter. That Wifco converter that you showed, your typical deck mount converter, a lot of the newer ones are not even coming with an option to get it with or without. They're all coming with it now, just because it's becoming so popular to do that. You have to make those changes. Stepping into doing that, those batteries cannot be read by a normal monitoring system. They don't show you that. So people will end up getting lithium batteries, throwing them in, and I'm testing my stuff and everything's showing good, and all of a sudden I've got no power, everything's dead. And you need to understand that you have to put a battery shunt in place. You got to be able to make sure that you can read those batteries correctly. So it's not just a black and white flop. There's stuff you have to do.
Same thing with solar.
Yep.
If they have an older solar controller that's not set up to charge a lithium battery, now they're having to change the solar controllers.
Yeah. Or next part of it is, a lot of nicer units, they use an inverter charger. And an inverter, you have to change that stuff out to make sure it's capable of doing it, or you're going to cause harm.
Yep. Yeah. So let me do the journey that we did on this Thor. And I guess it's a classic example of anybody that is looking to take their lead acid batteries and just replace it with a lithium battery. You can't do that. So the first thing we had to do was we had to find out, okay, what kind of charger do you have? And this is actually a picture of that charger, and it's a WIFCO. And doing the research at WFCO, that's
World Friendship Company.
Yeah.
Yep. So this charger will simply do 13.6 volts until the battery reaches 12.6, and that could be for 3 hours, or up to almost 8 hours in a lead acid battery. The next thing is then it drops down to 12.2. So you look at the typical Agm battery, like this one here, they want 14.4 volts. And if you're not getting 14.4 volts in that, it'll keep trying to charge, and it will not do 100% charge. So you're looking at probably doing about 60%. And now you're paying $1,000 or $2,000 for two of them, and you're getting 60% up. So you're not getting your money's worth out of that whole unit. So the next thing that we did is we went in and looked at, we upgraded. Well, then we had to find out where the converter was at. So I'll show you this picture. This was finally, I got a hold of Thor, and they told me that it was under the bed pedestal. So we lifted the bed up, and there was a false wall towards the back. So we took that off and still couldn't get there because if you can see here, there was a water heater. And so when we slid the mattress back finally, we saw this little door that was, there was a board covering this, and off to the right of this, you can't see it, is the actual converter is way underneath the bed. And so it was a major ordeal to get it changed out. And after we swapped out the new converter, we went with it was called Progressive Dynamic Charge, and it had a charge wizard with that. And it will do 14.4 volts. So that's what we wanted. And we called, we said, what do you recommend? Yep, this is the one we want. Good. Okay, so that's going to work fine. And we put that unit in, and then later on we tested it, and we were only getting 13.6 volts out of it. It was like, so I called Dennis with Progressive Dynamics, and I asked him what happened, and he said, well, how far away is the converter? Excuse me. How far away is the converter from the battery? And so we measured it, and originally we were told it was a 6-gauge wire cable that went from the converter under the bed all the way up to the battery compartment. And, oh, that's plenty. That gauge is fine. Well, when I talked to Dennis about it, he said, well, for every feet, and there is a chart that you can look at and say, this is what you're going to get drop in voltage for every foot that you're going. And we were probably about 25 feet and realized we needed to put in probably 2-gauge wire in that to get that full voltage coming in. So, that's the next thing you have to look at is how far away is all this stuff from you. So it's not something you can just pop it in there without doing a little bit of research. The other thing is that we went out and then checked the batteries after, it was probably 2 weeks or a little more that was sitting there, and the batteries were completely dead at 0. Well, your battery management system is going to take a look at what your voltage is, and if you drop below a certain point, it'll shut it off before it will damage it. And what we didn't realize is, what operates off the 12-volt system. That's important to know too. So talk about that, Dennis, a little bit. What things inside an RV are going to run off that battery and drain that battery down?
So I'll chime in on that. It's pretty much everything in that unit is going to run off of 12 volt in some way, shape, or form, unless something is dedicated to a 110 volt circuit that's directly plugged into it. Your normal lights, your jacks, your slide outs, all your appliances, the control boards and things inside of them run on 12 volt, even though you may have that fridge on 110, it's still running off a 12 volt. Water pumps, anything like that. So it really runs 90% of the unit in some way, shape, or form.
Yep. So what I typically do, and I'm going to bring up a slide here, and this is another kind of a journey in what battery is best for you. And I get this question a lot. I'm going to add this to the stream and see if we can pop this up. And let's do a full screen on this one. Oops, that is the wrong one. I'm going to go to this one here. Now, this is a website that Go Power. It's gpelectric.com. And anytime somebody asks me what battery is best for me or what solar panel is best for me, and do I go lithium, do I go regular? So you need to, again, you look at how often you go. So let's say you're just going to boondock or dry camp a few days, not forever. And so the first thing you want to do is what is taking that battery power? And like Zach just talked about, if you have halogen lights, incandescent especially, they're going to draw 1.5 amps in that unit. And you can greatly reduce that by going to the LEDs, which are going to draw like 0.5, 10 times less battery power. And the hard thing is for people, and I do this in seminars all the time, is to really understand, what's drawing from that system, how much is drawing, how much you're going to use it. And this is a great calculator to get started with. There's no perfect science. I mean, you can't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to have my lights on for 2 hours a day, and I'm going to go out for 5 days a week, and I'm going to have the roof vents on for 6 hours a day. And, there's no way you can specifically calculate everything, but this gives you a good start on it to say, you know what, wow, my refrigerator is going to draw, about 8 amps, when it's running off of the LP even. And so there's different things. Then you look at, do I have a compressor driven residential, which this Thor does, and that's why it was empty, dead, is because that refrigerator had been left on, and that's going to drain them down really fast. So you look at the amp hours available, and I guess we didn't talk about that beforehand. When you start looking at the difference in batteries, your lead acid batteries are going to come in group 24s, 27s, 31s. Talk a little bit about that, Dustin and Zach. What are amp hours and what's that do?
The easiest way that I try to explain it to people, because a lot of customers, when they're going through and looking at making these changes or buying stuff in general, that's their question is, well, how long can I run this? If I buy one of these, can I do a weekend or whatever? Whatever that number states, whether it's 100 amp hours, right, at a 20-hour rate, that's basically stating that over a course of 20 hours, you have X amount that you can use at that rate. That's just the easiest way to break it down. Going back to that chart that you had brought up, talking about amp hours and all that stuff and explaining it, that is a great jumping off point. But what everybody needs to understand is every single person uses stuff differently. You touched on that. There's no way to go, I'm going to do this for 2 hours and this and that. So getting a basic idea of, hey, I have 100 amp hours to play with if I'm using roughly 20 amps an hour, right, kind of thing, you can kind of figure it out.
Let me jump in just real quick. Sorry to interrupt you, but something I realized we didn't talk about is that lead acid and AGM, whatever amp hour rating they have, you can only use 50%. Yeah. So if you have, 100 amp hour AGM, you've got 50. With lithium, you can go almost to 100%. Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry, but
no. So kind of knowing what you have and what you're playing with is a good starting point for you to make that jumping off point. I like to tell people, hey, a lot of these kits, when you first buy these start out kits, they're not rated for like a one and done. So you can, like a perfect example, you're showing Go Power, their Overlander kits, 190 watt panel with a 30 amp charge controller and all that stuff. You can run up to 3 panels on that. You can always go more. If you're not, hey, I'm not 100% sure what I'm using, what I'm doing, buy a 1 panel kit. If you feel like it's not enough after going out for a weekend, add another panel to it. It's not, there's no direct science. It's just, hey, you may use it. You may have the same coach, the same setup as your neighbor, but you're using it different than him.
Right. You can also add more battery power. You just don't want to do it too much longer. You know, if you've gone 6 months, you don't want to add a second battery if you don't know that battery is, and you want to match batteries with batteries.
And David, another common problem that we see all the time is, you know, we help a lot of customers that have new coaches. We help a lot of customers have secondhand coaches, you know, or used coaches that they bought. A lot of the motorhomes will typically come with batteries in them from the manufacturer, but the travel trailers and fifth wheels don't. So we see a lot of, when you ask, you know, hey, what do we come across? Customers will come in with a fifth wheel with 3, 4, 5 slide outs, leveling jack system, and we'll open it up to find out like their concern is due to low voltage. They only have one battery.
One battery
in a coach that needs 2 to 4. You know.
Well, and you know that when you are in a certain price point, even if the manufacturer does put a battery in, like on the Class Cs, and usually it's going to be the Group 24, the lowest amp hours, the cheapest battery in there, because they're not going to waste money. You know, the next one sitting side by side is $400 less, but you don't know why, because nobody told you that, well, this one has a Group 27 and it's got 140 amp hours versus this one that's only got, less than that. But no, that is very, very true.
You say your lick and stick batteries, I don't want to say dealers, but there's dealerships that order pallets of batteries that are the lick and stick batteries with these generic, cheap, bottom line fruit in the coaches, knowing that you're going to need a new battery within a year.
Yeah. Well, and that's, that's something important, I think, at this time in the RV industry, is that there are so many people coming into the industry. And I see this, it's a roller coaster ride that I've seen over the, I've been in this business almost 40 years now. And, when they can't sell them fast enough, they know there's this big line of people are going to keep coming. And if a year down the road, and, they're betting, and not all of them, I can't say that in generalities, but, a lot of times they look at it and they say, if you're not going to educate yourself, then somebody's going to say, well, I got an 8995 battery, and they'll go buy that. So the dealer's going to do the same thing. And that's probably one of the biggest things I can stress to people, and I do it in my seminars, is make sure you educate yourself, whether you're buying a new unit or buying a part to put in it or something in there. Do some research on it and find out, because you can always find something cheaper. Yeah. But it's not better. And if you don't know the difference, then you're not gonna pay this for it unless you know it. And you see a lot of dealers that say, well, you know what, they're going to go down to this membership store and they're going to buy one for $89.95. So I'm just going to get a pallet full of these things and I'm going to sell them for that price. And hopefully they don't go dry camping. And 2 years from now, when their battery goes bad, they might not even have their unit back then.
I think sometimes they do it on purpose to, your battery's not holding up. Well, now you need more batteries, and now you need a solar panel.
Well, there's planned obsolescence in some things, isn't there? You don't want to make it last forever, because you'll never be back to buy anything. But the more you can educate yourself on that, the better off you'll be.
Well, knowing, for the consumers that are watching right now that are new, maybe they bought a new RV or they bought an old RV, learn where your batteries are at, learn what size they are, learn how to maintain them. Purchase, like we had our last special guest, he said, hey, buy a battery manometer,
Yep.
Get the tools that you need, whether it's a water battery filler, a manometer, something to clean the cables with, have that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to throw up a slide here, because Chuck posted something here that nobody could see that chart I had, and I knew they wouldn't, but here is the website. It's gpelectric.com. And if you go into their knowledge-based system, they've got the calculators and stuff. Expion 360 is the battery company that, we've done a lot of research on, and we've got some great information on batteries in that slide. So, if you want to go to that chart, that's the place to get that. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you another chart here that I know you won't be able to see it well, but this is recommended kits. And if you go on that site, and you will see that they're kind of giving you a ballpark. We were saying beforehand that, how do you know what size battery you need? How do you know what this is at? So, if you have these different size RVs, from the pop-up all the way up to the Class A's, and you're going to go out for 1 to 2 days or 3 to 5 days, and, you've got, and it also kind of depends on people too, how many people are going, because what might work on one day will not work on the next day. And I think we got here, is it Marty? I'm going to put this up here. Martin Price says, I have been pleased with the performance of 2 6-volt flooded lead acid batteries for my use. He's asking, are 6-volt AGMs made, and would they provide the same benefit? Dustin, can you touch on that one?
So basically, it's like a next level battery. AGM is going to be less maintenance. They're maintenance free.
Yep.
They're not 100% maintenance free, like we were saying. You still want to keep them clean. You still want to keep the terminals clean.
Right, but they do make an AGM 6-volt.
Yeah.
And 6-volt batteries. There's a lot of confusion in that. In the seminars that I do, people say, well, I'm just going to put 2 6-volt batteries in and double my amp hours. You don't do that. When you put 6-volt batteries, they're common in golf carts. You have to have 2 batteries for that. You hook it up positive to negative. That gives you a 12-volt bank. It does not double your amp hours. The advantage of AGM batteries that I've found over the years, and Zach, let me ask you, what's the advantage of AGM batteries that you've seen?
Really, in me doing this.
Excuse me, I don't mean AGMs. I mean 6-volt versus 12.
So answering that question, people tend to go, oh, well, you're right. I'm hooking them up. I'm just going to throw them in, and that's the way you go. Yes, technically, because you're hooking them in series instead of in parallel, the numbers don't change. But because the plates and everything are larger inside, they last in draw more than your standard, 12-volt batteries. So people that are doing dry camping and things like that, that's usually the first step is, hey, changing my batteries into 6 volts. I get to draw more out because the plates are larger in the battery.
Yeah.
Right.
And
more cycles.
Yeah.
Basically. And I know when I worked at Winnebago, we researched heavily, and Winnebago's always gone with the 12-volt battery versus the 6. Fleetwood and Monaco's and all those guys went with the 6-volt batteries, basically because you would get more cycles out of it. It was a heavier battery, normally made better. But I know Winnebago, we started out with diehards, and then we went to, I think, Deca for a little while. Now they're using Napa because they've researched heavily. And part of the problem was when your battery went bad and you had to take it to a Sears Craftsman place. The kids like, what?
Yeah.
That wasn't real. I was in owner relations, and I got a lot of calls. They wouldn't take my batteries. They'll swap out your screwdriver, but they wouldn't do the batteries. But the thing that Winnebago looked at is AGM batteries were harder to find. You don't see them. I keep going at 6-volt batteries were harder to find if you needed service. The golf cart places aren't open in the middle of the night and on weekends, and a lot of them won't sell directly out. They gassed more, and the average person didn't check their fluid levels. So once you had that fluid level go down below the plates, now you lost the advantage that you had in those 6-volt batteries. And so Winnebago went with 12 and has for the longest time. And getting back to what battery is best for you, I do want to put up the slide here by Scott again, if I can find it. Yeah, there we go. They boondock 7 days with AGM batteries and their solar system, and it's an incredible combo. He does, he didn't say what solar system he had size wise, but again, that's where you really have to take a look at that chart and say, okay, I'm going to be going for 3 to 4 days. There's just the two of us. How many amp hours do I think I need? And then let's talk a little bit about solar panels. What company do you guys carry?
So I sell Samlex, Go Power, Zamp. I mean, I sell all the main guys. I sell a lot more Go Power probably than anybody. A lot of times when people are upgrading to the Agm batteries and whatnot, those come with a 2-year warranty. If you buy a single solar panel kit with it, they change it to a 5-year warranty. A lot of people like that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a nice benefit too on it. That's what I was going to say. If you didn't mention that with them, doubling the warranty on the batteries.
Well, and that's something too that in the research that I found is that the Xbeyond 360 has a 10-year warranty.
Yeah.
On it. That's unheard of. And so
yeah.
the thing that a lot of people say, let's get back to, are lithiums right for me? You have to look at the fact that, all right, I'm going to pay probably somewhere close to $1,000. There are some cheaper ones out there. I see they have a 5-year warranty on some of those. I haven't researched everything that's out there, but I don't think that you're going to be as happy with those. So you have to look at how much amp hours do you really need? How much dry camping are you going to do? Here we've got Scott that's going out for 7 days with 2 6-volt, but I'm pretty sure you have a pretty good sized solar panel system up there, because 100 from what I've gotten calculations from Mike Sokol and others out there, that 100 watt panel is going to give you about 6 amps a day. Or some to amp hours recharge.
Did you see Ryan Moore's comment? It's the very one at the bottom.
Oh, I did not. It didn't scroll down. Okay. Let's see. Ryan
it says, love my 100 amp lithiums plus 100 watt, 90 watt solar panel and 12 volt refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's, going back to Scott's comment. Hey, I've been doing dry camp. I, went out for 7 days. Everybody's definition of boondocking is different. This gentleman, it may be just him, or him and one other person, exactly like you said. What are they doing? They're going out, they're running their fridge on propane, they're running lights, and they're kind of doing their thing. Well, your next guy over, his definition of boondocking may be, I need to run my inverter, I need to watch all my shows, I need to do all this stuff. So that system may not be what he needs.
Yeah. And that's one of the things you run into all the time in when somebody asks a question, is that there is no perfect science of how everybody RVs. Everybody does it different. It depends on the weather. If you run into some cool weather, I've got people who say, how many plan to RV in the wintertime? And, 2 or 3 people raise their hand and say, well, how many are going to RV in the wintertime where it's warm? Because that's the difference. But you go in the mountains and you can find below freezing temperatures almost any month out in the year. And so, if you're going to do any kind of cold weather camping, even if it gets down to 50 degrees, the heater's going to start up.
Yeah. Yep.
So, that's going to take a lot of battery power. So that's why you got to really sit down with that calculator and figure out, how much am I going to do that, and work with somebody like you, Zach, that has taken the time, because you're going to find somebody, and I don't care if it's the RV industry or if it's the truck, the dealerships or something like that. I remember when I asked my salesman, how much can I pull in, how much can I put in the back of this truck? Well, whatever it'll fit.
Yeah, always.
Well, he's not the one that's going to be broken down out on the side of the road and doing that. And I just had a question come in this morning that said, the salesman told me that I could run this roof air conditioner on this battery and a 100 watt solar panel for over 3 hours. It's like, well, okay, if it's perfect condition and running in roof air conditioner, it's not going to run full capacity at all times. You're going to get the cycles in them. And, doing the math in it. And, I did refer to Mike Sokol, and Mike said, I don't see where it can do that. But,
it all comes back to consumption. Yeah. Each RV is different.
Yep.
Each owner's different.
Yep.
And we have a restaurant next door, and I like to joke about the restaurant stuff a lot. All right, because the owner's over here all the time visiting with us. So it's like, do you do catering? Yeah, I do catering. Okay, catering for 20 people, catering for 200. You know, it's the same thing with the batteries, and the same thing with the solar. We always try never to oversell somebody.
Yep.
If the regular lead acid batteries, if they come in, they have 2 group 24s. We try to, hey, let's start out with 2 6s. Go back out, use it, see how you do. If you find out you're depleting those, then come back in and let's sell you 1 solar panel. If that's not enough, come back in, we'll add a second one.
Yep.
That way they're not getting the whole.
Yep.
You're not selling them, a $10,000 system, like you said, they're only going to use.
Yeah. Well, and something I like to, talk to people about when you are looking at solar panels, everybody wants to put them up on the roof and forget about them. And, the problem when you do something like that is whether you've got lithium batteries or, if you decided which way works for you, that, first of all, you have to be out in the sun. And so now if you're boondocking, and that's the whole reason you've got solar panels and these batteries is you're not hooked up to electricity. You don't want to run your generator. So now you got to be out in the sun. And that means that you heat that coach up 20, 30 degrees hotter just by being in the sun to get that charge. And well, you're not running your roof air conditioner because unless you've got soft start RV and a huge bank of lithiums in there, but typically you're not going to do that. So you put it underneath the shade. Well, now all of a sudden you don't have line of sight to the sun, except for maybe this little sliver of stuff. The other thing is when they're flat mounted on the top here, you don't get a charge until probably about 6 hours of that perfect little pie because of the angle that sun is at in the morning and in the afternoon. So I tell people that, I like the portables because, you can put them out directly to the sun, out in the sun area where, you're underneath the shade. So you get the best of both worlds. You can angle them in the afternoon. You can put them in array. So hook them in series and do 200 or 300 or 400. It is a little more of a pain, I guess, when you start, having to.
And that comes back to preference because
and there's a little bit of
around, put it in those compartments. It takes a risk of damaging as well.
And security. I've had that from people too. So it's something to consider that if you're going to be putting the roof panels, maybe a combination. And some people say, well, I put the solar panels on the top because when I'm driving down the road, then I get a charge, from the sun when you're down the road, which is true, except you are getting a charge from your rooftop or from your engine alternator when you're driving down the road. So, you're kind of defeating the purpose of that. Ryan had one more comment. I hear we've got the Academy Award nomination music going that I'd like to thank all of the people that helped me get here. If I ever win an Academy Award, it's going to be really weird. They're going to see me up there with a beer bottle because that's what I've practiced with all my life pretty much, I think. I thought at one point I was going to do that. But Ryan did say he's got SOK is $600 with low temp protection. And I'm not familiar with SOK. I've worked with Battleborn. Battleborn is in the Keystone product, and they also they've got 2 different names. It's Battleborn and what's the other one? They've got a consumer version that they sell, which is Battleborn, and then whatever's going into the Keystone product. And they make a great product. And I think the more you see some of these good companies coming in, and the more people that are, I remember people going $300 for a battery. Are you kidding me? Well, now it's like, I'm going to put this $1,000 battery in. Yeah, but if it lasts 10 years, then it actually pays for itself. So you have to kind of decide, we'll get back to the original question is how long are you going out dry camping? How much are you going to run? That'll tell you how many amp hours you need to have. Lithium's going to charge up a lot faster than the lead acid. And, what's my price point? How long do I plan to keep this RV?
Yeah.
Is it 10 years? You'll pay for yourself with a lithium, I think.
And I touching on that of, hey, why am I doing it? Optimal power. So all your other batteries, they peter out as they kind of go down. Lithiums don't do that. If you look at your chart.
One last thing I'm going to bring up, and you mentioned a little earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see this. This is a Go Power battery minder, and if you're going to put lithium batteries in, my suggestion would be definitely to get a battery monitor that gives you a digital reading, because the one you have in your RV that you hit the button and it gives you little light levels, lithium batteries will always look full, even when they get down to almost 100%, and then until they drop out. So that light will always look like that battery is full. So it's to me, it's a good idea to get a digital battery monitor to put into that unit, whether it's the Go Power has them. I know that XBN 360, there's a lot of them out there that are great to have. So I would definitely advise you to do that. Do your research. I think we're running right at about time to go here, and I appreciate everybody coming out. We've got Michael and Scott and Krista and Ryan. We even have somebody in the north part of Mexico that is checked in, and north of Mexico. So it's Scott and Martin. We appreciate everybody coming out.
Yep.
Hopefully we got you on a good path that you can do your research and decide what's best for you. So join us next week. Thanks a lot for coming out, and have a great rest of the week. Thanks Dustin.
Everybody.
Thanks, Doc.